Hi, I'm Rocco Staino, and welcome to StoryMakers on KidLit TV. Today, I have the glamorous Vanessa Brantley-Newton. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
You look marvelous, as
Thank
they
you.
say.
And I say you look very dapper. I love men in bow ties.
These are from Bow Ties, B-E-A-U ties. But you have so many great books, but this one must be about you. Mary Had a Little Glam, you know, and was that you when you were a child?
Oh my goodness. My mother used to dress my sisters and I in bows and all kinds of dresses. They would just make fun of us because we were so dressed. So you're going to church, where are you going? You're going to a party. But my mother really believed in how we presented ourselves to the world was very important. So how she dressed us was super duper important.
And you're an illustrator, and you've also written a few books also and illustrated them. So is that, did you always like to draw even as a child?
Oh, absolutely. That was my heart. I mean, I would go to church and I would sit on the pew and I would draw. I would just draw. I would go home, and my mother was in school to become a LPN at the time, and she had a Grey's Anatomy book, and if anybody knows about those medical books, they were very expensive and they were boring to me. So I'd look in the back of the books and there were like these empty papers, and I was like, we need to fill this up. You know, this is an ugly book, and you need to put pretty pictures in it. So I would draw in the back of her books, and she'd go to school and was very embarrassed, you know, when you open the book and it's, that's a really expensive book and your kid is drawing in it. But my drawings had to go somewhere, and so I would find different places to put them in.
But now you put them all in books.
I put them in books.
Yes,
This is
yeah.
awesome.
You know, and you know, two of your books one would say they're Black history books because they're about real people. Absolutely. You know, The Youngest Marcher, which is the story of Audrey Faye Hendricks, who was in the Civil Rights Movement.
That's right. In 1963, she was 9 years old, and she went to jail for what she believed in. And she believed that she should have the right, like any other child, to go to a store called Newberry's, and which is like a Target maybe now, and she would be able to go to a Newberry and buy ice cream and have it with her family just like everybody else. So that was really important to her. She has been such a catalyst for little girls now, doing great things. And so I just want to say to children, you can be little and do big things.
This is a book about an artist, Harriet Powers, a journey from slave to artist, sewing stories. So what type of artist was Harriet?
Harriet was a quilter. She made beautiful handmade quilts. Now you have to think, back in the slavery days, there weren't things like sewing machines that you have right now where you can kind of zip and it's done. She literally had to cut these different pieces of fabric and put them together. And then, being poor, she didn't really have a whole lot of money for fabric. So she used old things like seed, or what they call feed bags, which are made out of burlap. Right. Old pieces of clothing that they were going to throw out. And she would cut those things and she'd cobble them together, much like a collage. And she'd put them together to create these beautiful quilts. One
of the things I did learn reading this book was about the quilting bees that they had, and that the men were not allowed at the bee until it was over.
Very true. My father tells me great stories about how his mother would be in the field and they would come together, and only the women would come together, and they would go together into somebody's house, and they would go from house to house making quilts for that particular family. So this week we're going to go to Miss Pearl's house, and we're going to make a quilt at Mrs. Pearl's house, and then Mrs. B's house next week. And they would have cake and coffee, and they would talk and pray and sing. It was awesome.
Well, I think maybe we should have a KidLit bee here. You know, you mentioned collage, and that's one of the art mediums that you use. But for our boys and girls that are watching that may not know what is collage?
Collage is a happy mix to me of different fabrics or papers or even materials, any kind of material, wood, plastic, and you cobble them together to make some kind of picture. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody, it has to make sense to you, but it's a beautiful way of expressing yourself with things that we already have on hand.
Here's an example from Sewing Stories, and so this is an example of collage. So can you kind of point out some of the different materials that were here?
Absolutely. So Miss Harriet used to make her quilts on cotton fabric, but she used to dye the colors herself. And so that was a part of collage as well. And so on this page here, we have this skirt, and she made what's called a story skirt. And there was all of these Bible stories that she cobbled together onto a quilt. And that was her way of collaging. So we have all these different animals, a lion, birds, a man. She loved God. So God is often represented here as a star or a sun. And the different animals from Noah's Ark we see in this piece. And these are all collages. I cut each one of these out.
They're paper, these are things that you cut out from paper.
These are from paper.
And then you then
apply it to another piece of paper. And so it has texture to it. You can actually feel it, but they're all hand cut out.
You know, another example of collage that I enjoyed here, and Mary had a little glam, and this one, you actually have someone for all the people in libraries, you have Melville Dewey.
Melville shows up fashionably.
Yeah, and that's like a photograph or some image that you probably cut out. And then you probably made that little hat.
Oh,
somewhere.
I definitely made that little hat. We get to, even in collage, not use all natural materials. Sometimes I can scan a piece of fabric into the computer and then take that fabric into another program and cut it out and make it into whatever I want to make it into.
So my one question is, this glam person, is that the librarian?
That's the librarian.
What a glamorous
Yes,
librarian, which
librarians I love librarians. And I think they can be very glamorous, and that's what I want children to know.
So you have so many different books. You know, we have some board books from Chronicle, and the interesting thing about these board books are they're based on a famous singer, Bob Marley.
Bob Marley.
Yes.
I love Bob Marley.
Can you sing any of his songs for us?
One love, one heart, let's get together and feel all right. That was one of my favorite songs.
Yes. You know, the other thing that I was surprised was that you actually did a golden book. Yes, classic golden books that have been around for like 75 years at least. So, but this is a relatively new golden book. Yes, but you join a long list of famous. Margaret Weiss Brown actually did a golden book.
One of my favorites. One of my favorites. Golden books are so important in children's lives. They're the first book that's usually given at a shower for a baby. And it's big enough for them to hold, so it's good enough that you can stick it in your church little pocket book and carry it with you when you go to church, or or grandma's house. It's just perfect for lap reading.
You Think Big, which has collage right there on the cover there. This is about making art?
That's right, in every way. See, art is not just drawing. It is singing, la 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 la. It's dancing. It's acting, and it's playing instruments, and it's poetry. It is so many different things, and so art is not just drawing, and there's different ways that you can get to express yourself in art, and you should run and find different ways to express yourself in it.
For all our boys and girls that are watching this show, yes, you gave us great examples of how you can be an artiste or an artist. And your newest book,
yes,
and this is your book because you wrote it and you illustrated it. It's called Grandma's Purse Collage, and on the purse. Yes. Did you base this on anybody you knew?
I remember my grandmother and how I would sneak off and go into her purse, which was not a nice thing to do. You should never go into other people's purses. But my grandmother had the most interesting things in her purse, like this lipstick, and this lipstick was called Cody lipstick, and it came in a gold container, and it was thick, heavy lipstick, almost like a crayon. And I remember I smeared some on thinking I was grandma, put it on. And I heard her footsteps come into the room. And she said, "Are you in my purse?" And I was like, oh, I'm in trouble now. And I tried to wipe the lipstick off really, really quick. And the stuff was like dye. I couldn't get it off my face. So she comes in and I have a face full of lipstick. And she goes, "Vanessa, were you in my purse?" "No, Grandma, I wasn't in your purse." She said, "But I do believe you have lipstick on." And I couldn't hide it. I mean, it took about 2 days to get the lipstick off.
Don't let Aunt Mabel bless the table. And the interesting thing about the group of people that show up at the house for dinner, this is a great cross-section of the U.S. There's every type of person you can almost imagine.
And I want every child that picks up a book by Vanessa Brantley-Newton to see themselves. It's important. I love diversity. I think diversity is so needed in children's books, and especially at this time. Diversity is crucial, and it's important that illustrators and writers get it to children, teach children to embrace other cultures and people that are not like them, and to ask questions, and in a safe place. That's always what I want to get to a child. When I didn't see myself in children's books, I thought I was invisible. And I remember a show that used to come on TV, and the show was called Romper Room. So she would hold up a mirror, and she would look through the mirror and she'd say, "I see Mary, I see Jane, I see Bobby," but she never called out Vanessa. So what I would do is I would scoot up to the TV and I would go, "Here I am." And still looking through the magic mirror, I was going, well, she doesn't see me. And so I'd scoot up to the TV even closer. "Now you definitely see me." And she never saw me. And not understanding that you had to send your name in order to be seen.
Well, I'm glad you explained that, because I used to go up and say, "Rocco, here's Rocco." And she never said, "I see Rocco."
You never saw Rocco
Yeah. This is another one that I would say is more of a black culture book, too, Early Sunday Morning. Yes, which is about...
Written by Deneen Milner. She had her very real story about how Sunday morning always happened early on Saturday. And it started with our hair. It started with preparing dinner and having your clothes all pressed and laid out. And so she goes into sharing that wonderful story of this little girl who has to do a solo on Sunday morning. So it's a really special book.
Here is another savvy girl. Sasha Savvy loves to code. Would you say this is like a girl empowerment?
It is a girl empowerment book. Often we think that girls don't like math or don't like technology. And now it's becoming this even playing field where boys and girls get to code. My niece, China, loves coding. It is her favorite thing. She already knows at 13 years old, I want to code. And this book is I believe, to little girls to really encourage them, we're not just beautiful here, we're beautiful up here too.
We've had various guests here on StoryMakers who, as children, had to face various challenges. And I understand that you had a challenge growing up.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I was born in 1963, and I started going to school right about 1968, 69. And I was afraid to go to school because there was something that I did called stuttering. And if you don't know what stuttering is, it's when you have the words up here, but your mouth can't seem to form them. And so right now, at the age that I am, when I get upset, it tends to come out. When I get nervous, it tends to come out. And so as a child, I was very afraid to talk to anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. When I did talk to somebody, they made fun of me, which made me feel really hurt. It hurt very, very bad. And so I wouldn't talk. So for a long time, I didn't talk. I really didn't talk to anybody. I would talk to my sister. I would talk to my mom because I thought they understood. And my mother and father were both musicians. My father is still a musician. My mom's up in heaven, but I hope she's watching. But I stuttered so bad, and my mom said, "I want to teach you something." And she said, "Do you know that you can't stutter if you sing?" And that was all I needed. That was everything I needed. I mean, she gave me that tool and I ran with it. So even while I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm actually singing it in my head. And that's what helps me to move it to you. It can be very painful for sometimes other people to see people who stutter, because you want to kind of wince up at them like, oh, I know what you want to say, just spit it out. And it's never that easy. But when I began to sing, a whole other Vanessa came. So that was really powerful.
And your parents also founded a school?
Yes. In 1969, we lived in Newark, New Jersey. And it was right after the riots that happened in Newark. So Newark was really burnt out.
Right.
There was a furniture store on Springfield Avenue. And my parents, along with the community that we lived in, decided to put a community school together. And in this community school, we had Black, we had white, we had Latino, and we got this awesome group of teachers that came in. But these teachers were just not teachers. They were musicians and poets and people in the public, artists, dancers and singers, and they would give us yoga classes. Before yoga became this really big thing, we were doing yoga. They taught us to sing, and so we would do a school concert for our parents in the backyard of the school. They taught us to do poetry, and it would be the first time that I would have a really special book read to me that changed my life. And it was all because of a teacher named Mrs. Russell. Now, I have to tell you about Mrs. Russell.
Yes, please.
Mrs. Russell had the biggest afro I think I've ever seen in my whole entire life. Like my fro, I have a mohawk fro. Mrs. Russell had a afro. And I believe in my heart that people probably lived up there. It was that big. But she was so pretty. And she wore the shortest dresses. But she was so sweet. And she knew that I had a learning difference. And the learning difference that I have is dyslexia. Now, I know probably you're wondering, what is dyslexia? It's when you get your R's and your S's backwards, or your 5s and your S's, or your B's and your D's. It makes it very difficult to understand letters sometimes, shapes. When my teacher would ask me, everybody put up their right hand, I would instantly put up my left. And I felt dumb, I felt stupid, I felt like I didn't fit in. And I remember one day she pulled me aside and she said, I want to read to you a book. But I didn't want to be pulled aside because I thought I had done something wrong. You know, oh, now they're going to take the dummy out because she doesn't need to be here with us. So I felt really bad. But Mrs. Russell took me over into a corner and she sat me on her lap and she pulled out this beautiful book called The Snowy Day. Mm-hmm. And The Snowy Day had this awesome little boy in it named Peter. And Peter looked just like me. I'd never seen a brown boy in a book before. So here's a brown boy who looks just like me. And there were so many similarities between us. His mama was chubby like my mom and had little fat arms like my mom and had the mom bun. His father had a big mustache like my dad did. And they had this beautiful yellow wallpaper in the room that looked like the wallpaper in our living room. And I think what really sent me over the moon was that he had a red snowsuit and I had a pink snowsuit. So instantly I thought somebody had taken a picture of us and put us in a book. And it changed my whole world. I existed because of this book. And so, Mrs. Russell, I don't know if you can see this, but I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.
And that book was created by Ezra Jack Keats, there's going to be a U.S. postage stamp for Ezra Jack Keats. Yes. So, boys and girls, you should go to your post office and ask for the Ezra Jack Keats stamp. And stamps are things you put on an envelope that's, when you want to mail them in those mailboxes as opposed to email. Well, thank you for being with us today. This was really fun. Do you have any other things in the works?
Oh my goodness, I have so many different things that I really can't share right now.
Okay. We'll just have to keep following you and find out what those new things are. So
please do that. You're so welcome. Thank you for having me, Rocco.
Yes. So remember, until next time, give a kid a book in any format.